Hi, good morning and welcome to Stickletarn. Stickletarn, by the way, we're down in southwest Wales, and our little small holding, we've got 20 acres, and we try to be as self-sufficient or as self-reliant as possible. I've stepped into the polytunnel this morning. I was going to be outside having a cup of tea, but a few spots of rain are coming over. So I've come into what I call my happy place. Now, today I just wanted to chat about what is a prepper. Are you a prepper? Who are preppers? Now, prepping or preparing, preppers or prepping is just a short version of preparing, and it's preparing for whatever life might throw at us. It's not all about crossbows, guns, bows and arrows, running around with knives in the woods, dressed in camo gear, although I have got some camouflage underwear, but you don't really want to see that. So it's not about that. That is, living wild in the woods, and making your own shelters and hunting, eating snails, slugs, worms, whatever you might find, and the odd rabbit. That's more survivalism. Prepping, to me and to a lot of people, is something completely different. So let's just put that in perspective. If you've got life insurance, you're preparing for the future, for what is going to happen to all of us at some point or other. We're all going to turn our toes up and start pushing up the daisies. And when you've got a family or young children, a partner, you start thinking about maybe taking out life insurance to give them a buffer, to help them out should anything happen to you, before your allotted time. That is prepping. You're preparing for the future. You're preparing for something that is going to happen. The same with funeral plans, car insurance, roadside assistance, breakdown cover. It's all being prepared. And the list can go on and on like that. So if you have anything like that, any types of insurance or dental plans or health plans, then basically you're a prepper. If you've got a first aid kit at home or in your car, then you've got that in case you cut yourself or somebody falls over and has an accident. So again, that is being prepared. You have that box of paracetamol sitting in the cupboard in case you have a headache. You have your spare light bulbs in case the bulb goes and you can change it, or a spare battery. That is all prepping. And that is sort of like the soft side of prepping, that people do and don't realise maybe that they are preppers. So unless you're somebody who goes to the shops every day to buy what you're going to be eating that day, we'll all have some food in the house. Whether it's a couple of extra tins of beans, our weekly shopping, fortnightly shopping, monthly shopping, a couple of loaves of bread in the freezer. And again, that is prepping. You're preparing, you're making sure you've got enough food to see you through, a few weeks. Now, the other side of it is when you start looking at the bigger picture and you think, well, what if my partner loses her job? What if I become unemployed? What if I get sick and I can't go out to work? So you then start thinking, maybe I should have a few extra bits in just to cover for that eventuality. And this is where you start getting more and more down the prepping route. And then there are those of us who prepare long term. And by long term, I say we're looking at the bigger picture. We look at what might happen, come winter, you know, we could get snowed in. We've just been through bad storms, you know, we went 40 hours without power, and so did a lot of other people, and they went for longer, some of them for several weeks without power. And that woke a lot of people up, these last winter storms, you know, into thinking, I've got to do something about this, because if this happens again, and that type of thing, weather things are happening, becoming more and more. So it woke a lot of people up to thinking, I need to think of an alternative method of boiling a bit of water for your cup of tea, keeping warm, and then coming on from that, it was then, we've got all that happening out in Ukraine with Russia. We've got what's happening in China. You've got what's just been happening in Spain and France with which is all affecting the food supplies, an interruption to food supplies, and is forecast to bring us shortages, and some of them shortages are actually starting to show up in the shops now. So people are thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to feed my family? And they're starting to put extra bits away for that. And then on top of that, of course, we had petrol and diesel shoot up through the roof. Then we had the power companies put up the gas and the electric, and we know that this winter is probably going to be a very, very tough winter for a lot of people. So it's all part of prepping, and like I said, it's not about buying a tent and getting a big knife and heading out to the woods and painting yourself up in camouflage paint and trying to hunt down, you know, little bunny rabbits to eat. It's not about that. It's about realising day to day what happens in the world, whether it be weather related, financially, job losses, anything, and how that can have an effect on you and your family. So that is what basically prepping is. And I encourage everybody to prep, whether it just be a few extra tins or a few packets of food here and there, having an alternative method of heating up food, having some extra warm blankets in, and you know, you can go on from that, and it's when you start looking at it and you sort of think, yeah, but what if, and it's the what ifs that start to worry people, and a lot of people can become very anxious over it, and they start panicking. And I always say, don't panic. Panicking isn't going to get you anywhere, and being worried about it isn't going to get you anywhere. You've got to think logically about these things, and at the end of the day, a lot of things are out of our hands, and all we can do is be prepared for what we can do. And if your anxiety levels are going through the roof and you're thinking we're all going to starve next winter, and there's going to be bodies lying in the street, there's going to be riots in the shops, and that is causing you anxiety, and you've got to think about, well, what can I do to ease that anxiety? And if having 100 tins of beans and 50 toilet rolls stashed away gives you some sort of comfort, then go for it. Whatever brings your anxiety levels down and makes you feel like you're in control, or gives you some control, then that is what you've got to do. Just lately on the prepping group, they've been talking about, I noticed a thread on there last night about medication, and what if, you know, they can't get their medication, and these are people who depend on medication every day for whatever issues they have. I never ever really give advice on that, because, well, I'm not going to take the responsibility for giving somebody advice on how to store medication, how to get extra medication, how they can use alternative medications. That is down to the individual. And if that causes you a lot of anxiety, the only advice I will give is go and talk to your doctor. You know, if you think, well, I've only got a 3-month supply, and if there's no more at the end of the 3 months, what am I going to do? You need to go and talk to your doctor and get your doctor to take your anxiety seriously and talk through alternatives with you of what you can do. That isn't something I do. I steer well clear of that, and I don't advise people to go down the holistic route either, because there's a lot of scam artists out there. And you know, you've got to be really, really careful. There's a lot of people who just want to take advantage of other people in a vulnerable state for their own financial gain. And I actually was somewhat bitten by somebody like that just over a year ago now. And I was in a very vulnerable state of mind. I was still grieving for the loss of my grandson after a tragic accident. And this person basically preyed on the vulnerable state I was in. And usually I'm a very, very strong person, and I don't get sucked in by people. But the state I was in, I did start to get sucked in, and then I found out what was going on. And I stepped well away from that person and got them out of my life. And knowing that I was so easily taken in, and knowing how strong-willed and strong-minded I am and independent, you know, it just made me realise there's a lot more vulnerable people out there who would easily be taken in and scammed and given false hope. And there was actually a documentary the other night on, is it Bella Gibbons? Who was an influencer on Instagram. You can Google her to find out what she was doing, but basically she claimed she had cancer and she could cure people with wellness, and they needed to come off their medications and treatments, etc., etc. And then it turned out she was a scam artist. But you Google her, you do your own research on her. And this person I had an encounter with just over a year ago when I was watching that documentary. That brought it all back, how very similar this other person was. Anyway, let's not go there at the moment. So, yeah, so anything medical issue, you know, basic first aid, yeah, go and learn your first aid. I'm quite happy to try herbal things, and I'll do herbal things with my livestock. But serious health matters, no, I won't mess around with those. You know, if I was, I mean, I have got, you know, a health condition that I'm battling at the moment. And thank you to that commenter who pointed out in one of my videos, found it really offensive that my cranial leak, which happened spontaneously and I start pouring fluid out my nose, was happening on a video, and he found it highly offensive and said I should edit it out of the video. But I have no control over that, and at times, yeah, my condition can make me very tired. It can make it very difficult for me to process things mentally, because, you know, I am losing this fluid from around my brain. And I have had some other nasty comments made by people. Oh, ignore her, you know, she's off the scale, she's her brains are leaking out and all this sort of thing. But there we go. And next week I do, hopefully, fingers crossed, the appointment doesn't get cancelled, but I meet with the surgeon and we'll discuss a plan going forward, and what, if anything, he can do to help me. But I wouldn't go down the holistic route for it. You know, I do make sure I eat a good diet, I take plenty exercise, and that, you know, I don't drink. I'm not a drinker anyway. I don't smoke. So I'm doing what I can, and I'm quite happy for the medical profession to help me where they can. Anyway, let's get back to prepping. So prepping, yes, is preparing for what life might throw at you, and none of us know what life might throw at us. It could be next week you find yourself out of a job, or your car breaks down, or your bank account has been emptied, you know, and if you haven't got a little bit of cash at home, or you know, haven't got a bit of emergency money put by to repair your car, or you haven't got any spare parts at home to repair it yourself, or spare tyre or anything like that, then you're very ill prepared, and you're basically depending on others to help sort you out when you get into difficulties. So prepping takes on different forms, and there is a big difference between prepping and survivalism, and there are lots of people who, you know, cross over the two. Now, I got into prepping because I had a really rough time in my life, and I'll tell you about that in another video, but it was a really harsh time for me and my children, and that made me realise that I didn't want to be reliant on anybody. And the more I started looking at the world around me and what was happening, the more I realised I needed to do my own thing. And to me, growing our own food and raising our own animals for food is what keeps my anxiety levels down, because I know that whatever happens, we'll be okay. Well, to a certain extent, of course, you know, we'll be okay. And that was one of the reasons why we've pursued, you know, a self-sufficient life during the power outage we had, you know, where we had no power for 40 hours. We managed fine. It didn't really have a big effect with us, because we have got alternatives. We've looked at alternatives. So, you know, we have all that in place. So our life just ticked along fine. And at the moment, you know, with all the price rises, etc., our life is just ticking along fine. None of it really hits us in the pocket, apart from the animal feed, because we're not dependent on the shops for food. And I know we're very lucky to be in that position, and not everybody is in the same position. So if you're looking at getting more prepared for what life can throw at you, then you know, you want to look at what would give you a sense of well-being, a sense of calm. Is it having a well-stocked pantry? Is it having the basics there in your pantry? So if you can't get something, you've still got the basics. If you can't get bread, you've still got flour, yeast, etc. You can make your own bread. And, you know, and if, you know, food is the biggest thing. You know, we all need food and water. We all need them. And there's lots we can do to prepare ourselves for food shortages, price rises, etc. You know, we can grow whatever we can and have the space to grow. And even if you haven't got the space to grow it, perhaps you can swap a skill. You know, maybe somebody else who has got a large garden and they struggle with it, go and speak to them and say, you know, well, how about I come along and help work in your garden with you? We'll grow some food and we'll share whatever is grown. You know, you can go down that route. You can go on foraging courses, look at foraging videos, look at foraging books, and practice a bit of foraging. You know, you can keep an eye on what's happening in the shops, and when you see special offers or things which are a good buy, then, and you've got the money, you could buy a few extras and put them by. But if you're going to start buying in food, only buy what you will eat. There's no point in buying in loads of stuff to find and then think, well, we don't really eat that, you know, so I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Just because it was a good offer at the time, you know, there's no point in buying it if it's not something you generally eat. And when you do buy something, so if you're buying pasta, say for example you buy a big bag of pasta because it seems a good price and you'll have it put by for meals, if you've got nothing to go with that pasta, eating bland pasta on its own is going to be pretty tough going. So as well as your big bag of pasta, you perhaps want to make out a little list of what you can put with it. You know, some tinned vegetables, some tinned tomatoes, or pasta sauces or whatever. So you've got the basics for meals there, rather than just odd bits of ingredients everywhere. You know, there's no point in just having flour sitting there and you've got nothing to go with it. Or having rice sitting there and again you've got nothing to go with it. Yeah, they're easy things to keep, but if you haven't got anything to complement them, it makes it very tough eating. So anyway, so that's all I'm going to talk about this morning. I'm now going to go and finish my cup of tea. All the animals are fed, and it's going to be cleaning out the goat shed today and a bit of logging, and I've got some plants to plant up or pot up and prick out, and all is good in the world here. I know it's not everywhere else, but I just hope everybody is happy and you stay safe and you keep your mind in a good place. Don't get swept away with all the fear mongering. Think things out logically, do a bit of research, think about what would make you feel safe and secure, and that's the route you want to take. You know, if it's having a massive stash of chocolate, you go for it. You know, if that's what you want, you do it. There's no right and wrong ways of prepping. It's doing whatever gives you peace of mind. So everybody take care, and I'll catch up with you again soon.